Hi, everyone. It's 1:30, so to use all of your time appropriately, we'll go ahead and get started. My name's Lauren, and I'm from the AIA California Council. I'm the program coordinator here who facilitates our member benefit program. And with us, I have Tom. He's a representative from Graphisoft, and he'll be leading the second half of the meeting. Thank you all for taking the time to join us today. We really appreciate you wanting to join us and learn more about what we can offer you as a member and our partnership with Graphisoft. So just a quick overview so you have the proper expectation. We'll do some introductions, and then we'll have two architects present, and we'll do a Q&A session at the end. And now I will turn it over to Tom, who will introduce his team.
Great, thank you very much. So yes, my name is Tom Simmons, and I'm with Arch Vista Consulting. We're based in Oakland. We're a BIM consulting company and provide services and sales for a variety of products to customers, architects, and builders here in Northern California. But we'll be actually also have some contacts here that we'll be talking about for work all over the California state. So first thing I want to do before we introduce our speakers is just kind of give you a little bit of an overview about BIM. For those of you who are new to what BIM is, it stands for Building Information Modeling. And the idea behind BIM is that you have an integrated workflow where you build a 3D model, and from that 3D model we can then extract drawings, sections, floor plans, details, all that's interconnected. So as you make a change in any part of the model, it updates all associated information, which increases the coordination, also allows for better collaboration, information management, and also life cycle management. Today we're going to be talking about ArchiCAD specifically, though many of the things we talk about can be related to many aspects of BIM. And one of the things that I always like to start with, which we'll talk about a lot today, is design and how BIM interacts with that. Our belief is that you know, ArchiCAD really, its strength is the fact that it's a very strong program for design, which means you can start with it in the early schematics phase of a project and push it all the way through to construction documents. If you've not visited the By Design series, this is something that was just recently developed by Graphisoft over the last year, and is really helping to educate a lot of architects in terms of how BIM is being used in design and some of the state and how it's being used in different states of our practice. So you can go to graphisoft.com/bydesign. This first season was started last year, and there was just a new season released just in the last month, which is starting to cover virtual realities, which deals with a variety of different technology components, including VR, virtual reality, augmented reality, 3D design, and more. Today, as we discuss the different projects that we will be reviewing through the two speakers, one of the things to keep in mind is that the AIACC has partnered with Graphisoft to offer a program which will allow you to have a 25% savings through September 23rd, and also 8 on-demand training sessions as part of that. This applies both to ArchiCAD 22 and ArchiCAD 22 Solo. So it's a really good time to purchase ArchiCAD and also get a lot of savings as part of that, as well as good education. This is a new user program. If you're an existing user and you want to add on additional licenses, Graphisoft is also offering multi-license savings, as well as 0% financing that you can access through this program as well. So with that, I'm actually going to hand over the presentation now to our speaker, David Marlott.
So thank you, Tom. And I've been an ArchiCAD user since long before Tom started with ArchiCAD, some decades back actually. D&M Architecture, my firm, is a 5-person firm based in Sausalito. I started the firm in around 1999, but our first project was probably around 2001. We do a variety of work, and we're currently juggling probably about 35 projects. And this is the key to one of the values we see in ArchiCAD, that it's a tool that's so versatile that we think we're able to be very productive and competitive, and with a number of projects going at once at various stages of design, construction, and permitting. Probably about 70% of our projects are residential and new homes, remodels, and so forth, and about 25% commercial, a bit of educational. Almost all of our work is currently in the Bay Area, and we have some homes as far north as Sea Ranch and as far south as Palm Springs. What I wanted to show today was a home we have underway and currently on the boards in Palm Springs. The site is basically flat with mountain views to the east and the west. The design program is about 4,500 square feet, 3-bedroom, living, dining, kitchen, media room, pool, cabana. The client's desire is a minimalist, modern design that is both economical, and it's a relative term here, and also what I want to focus on a bit is a desire that it should be net zero. So just very quickly, Palm Springs, as I think everyone probably is aware, is something of a mecca for mid-century modern design. It's home to thousands of mid-century examples, from William Kreisel and Donald Wexler and Albert Frey to even Neutra's classic Kaufman Desert House. And interestingly enough, even a landmark Bank of America building that was probably inspired, more than a little bit inspired, by Le Corbusier. Zoning regulations, which affect us, really force us into a single level house that has 12-foot height limit at the setbacks and 18 feet towards the middle. So Palm Springs really wants just this very low-lying kind of a building landscape. So when we start a project, like most architects, I think, we use a variety of tools to analyze the site, develop a design program, sketch, collect our thoughts, and so forth. But very quickly, we start to use ArchiCAD to create blocks. Next slide, here we go. So very quickly, we start to use ArchiCAD to create blocks and move them around. So ArchiCAD is really an initial sketching tool for us in the same way that a pen might be, or other people might use something like SketchUp. ArchiCAD has a 3D zone tool that's very powerful, and we use that when we do commercial tenant improvement work and other types of things. But for just initial design, we like something very fast and graphic and simple. So we just use ArchiCAD's fills, which has a dynamic ability to display the area of the fill, and we can modify that with the name of the space. So as we move things and manipulate them, we're getting almost instant feedback about the relative sizes and areas and things. So it's really just almost doing what we could do in paper a long time ago, but using ArchiCAD. And then from the fill level, we then start to just use the default wall settings. So we're just moving very quickly. What's interesting with ArchiCAD, I think other BIM software, is rather than moving from phase to phase, in a sort of traditional schematic design development CD progression, we find that our process becomes much more iterative and not so linear as we refine the model and continuously go back and add layers of information. So we started with some fills, we organized the space, we started just using the default wall settings, not really caring too much about the 8 feet or 9 feet or whatever, started adding that in, and immediately we see that we see some feedback in terms of the scale and volume. And so ArchiCAD helps us develop and discover design, not just everything designing ourselves. So as we move through, our first images, what we might call schematic, are using kind of not a low level, but a basic level of rendering from ArchiCAD, and then we just print a PDF. Nothing very fancy here. The textures right now are just kind of placeholders. And then we also, and I wanted to touch on this, use something called BIMX. BIMX is, for us, a critical communication tool. What it allows us to do is create a model, and then using a free BIMX viewer that the client has access to on a tablet or a phone or a computer, the client can navigate through and manipulate the 3D model, him or herself. Certain clients become addicted to this. You know, they need their Friday fix of BIMX. Others, you know, less so. But if a client does, you know, take to this, we find it's a tremendous money saver, and it creates a much more engaged client. So he or she can discover the design rather than relying just on a series of passive renderings. So we think BIMX is very important to our practice as well. It's not the highest level of rendering, but the communication advantages are really great. So as soon as the design is what we would call kind of stable, we also look at energy. And in Palm Springs, it's all about shading, and the best strategies are not always obvious. So ArchiCAD has sun study tools. We set the location and the orientation, and we can do create movies and so forth to analyze the sun and the shading. But also we export the ArchiCAD model to another software we use called Ecotech. And so that's interesting for us because it can analyze the radiation received by any surfaces over the course of the year, and can show us that even though in a sun study, all of the glass might appear exposed to the sun, in this case, the eastern glass has a less intense sun. So in fact, this shows us where we should focus our efforts in terms of shading and so forth. Then again, with Ecotech, in conjunction with ArchiCAD, also looks at the heating and cooling loads, identify weaknesses, and then this tells us where we need to go back to ArchiCAD and modify the design, and rerun the tests, and finding the right balance. So continuing, as we result of our earlier energy analysis, we've modified the design further. So this the same model, which is what's really critical. We're not jumping into one software and then another. It's the same model that started with simple fill patterns, and just in this case, a few weeks, moved into some fairly refined renderings and plans and so forth. And so already this model is passing Title 24 by a very wide margin, and doing nothing very exotic. And as it's currently planned, even with an 8 kilowatt photovoltaic array, we should be completely net zero. And then these are some more images. They're using ArchiCAD's CineRender engine. So previously, when we had very simple, we were using a kind of a simplified fast rendering, but then also still within ArchiCAD, no Photoshop, we can get quite a high level of rendering, setting photographic backgrounds and textures and so forth, all staying within the same environment. So the design could continue to change, and we can continue to change even these renderings. And then the next steps here will be to add further details and sections and begin working with our structural engineer to get some more reality around these forms, moving to pricing sets and permitting. Since the Palm Springs house is still in the design phase, I'll jump to a project that we completed a few years ago to look at a little bit of documentation with ArchiCAD. So this is a 1,650 square foot house in San Francisco that is LEED Platinum. So the lot is very small. It's only 25 feet by 65 feet with an existing 1907 cottage in the back. We first modeled the small cottage and then fulfilled our rear yard requirements in San Francisco zoning by placing a courtyard between the buildings. And then the remaining available area was only 25 feet square. So that defined our new house. The new house is on 3 living levels over a garage with a roof deck. So it's very vertical, 5 levels in all. We organized all the circulation on the south side as a buffer against the cottage, and that leaves the north side open to the street and downtown views of San Francisco. Now, since we were doing our LEED Platinum home, one of the big challenges here was how to incorporate features for energy efficiency when our predominant views were north-facing, and we were filling up the lot so completely that we literally had no room left for overhangs to protect the south-facing view. And so ArchiCAD helped us to model this and help the client understand as well, of course. In this case, we used some polycarbonate panels on the south side that provided a level of insulation and privacy, but while allowing some passive solar gain. And then on the north side, we could have more view, more windows, and then the south side staircases allowed us to take advantage of a natural stack effect for ventilation. So we were able to use ArchiCAD to understand and communicate all of these relationships and come up with just a whole series of strategies for energy savings. And we incorporate the 3D views in our documentation, maybe somewhat modestly. We're careful to be sure that the 3D views are really seen more as a intent rather than a construction detailing. But they're used by contractors and clients alike to understand the details a little bit better, to provide context, and that's what we're trying to do with that. But the 2D is also really just a two-dimensional view of the 3D model. So building elevations and sections are live, meaning that as the model may change, then these update themselves automatically. We do add lines and fills and text on top of the underlying live elevations to clean up certain areas and improve the graphics. So ArchiCAD also has, which we love, an intelligent labeling tool that lets us label the doors and the windows automatically in elevation, as well as plan, of course. And this is tied into our schedules. So once again, everything is integrated. And if one thing moves, then everything else moves with it. The sections are also live views of the model with some fills and other lines just for cleanup. And the details that you see are cut from the model, but then we do develop those in 2 dimensions using just the drafting tools available in ArchiCAD. And then interior elevations also live. So those can update, and we can from these provide takeoffs of area of tile, area of for painting and other wall finishes. And once again, the 3D renderings are really critical to help the contractor and cabinet maker and everyone else understand the intent of what we're trying to do. So they provide context that's really, really important. So as ArchiCAD evolves, our use of ArchiCAD, we've seen it evolves as well. Like I said, I'd probably go back to version 2 point something, so way, way back. But we've seen our practice evolve with ArchiCAD. We try to take advantage of everything that it has to offer us. Not long ago, we never touched the high-end CineRender engine. Now it's really a core to our communication. Other non-visual aspects of ArchiCAD I wanted to touch on that are very important for us is the teamwork functionality. We're a small firm, and we do small projects, but everything is on teamwork. For us, teamwork is critical for versioning control. It's very rare that we have a number of people on one project, but we don't have to deal with saved out views with certain dates and so forth when everything is on a central server with teamwork. Also, Graphisoft offers what they call a BIM cloud server. So our teamwork files are actually up in the cloud. I have consultants I work with in Paris and Budapest. I have an employee in Los Angeles. Our firm is in Sausalito. So being able to work that way through the cloud is also very high value for us, and I think makes us very, very competitive with other firms that don't have that resource. Also, we have a flexibility of a networked licensed technology. So we have a number of licenses, but with remote employees, people working from home or at the job site, we can just sort of check in and check out licenses. So that's very important to us as well, not just the graphic, and design tools of ArchiCAD. So with this flexibility and the integration, that's why we think this ArchiCAD lets us compete with much larger firms and be very flexible and have everyone in the practice feeling like they're touching every aspect of every project that we do. Thanks.
Great, David. That was a fantastic overview of the 2 projects and how you use ArchiCAD. So with that, we'll go ahead and move on to our next speaker. This is Riyad Ghanem. He is with RG Architecture out of San Francisco. And Riyad, I'm going to go ahead and let you go ahead and start.
Okay, great. I hope everybody can hear me. Yes, my name is Riyad Ghanem, principal of RG Architecture. And like David's presentation, I think we use ArchiCAD in much the same way. And my focus, let's see, Tom, perhaps you could just help me. I'm wondering how I get to the next slide. Is that, I'm not sure.
Got it. My apologies. Yep. Yep.
Okay.
You got it.
Do I have that or not now? Or?
No, I've got it on my side, but I will time it with your discussion.
Okay. So the conversation I thought I'd have was a little bit about how we use ArchiCAD from feasibility to finish is kind of how I'm theming my webinar. And like David, we use ArchiCAD very early on in the process. Right away, we start doing feasibility, analyzing sites, analyzing yield, and then we stay in ArchiCAD the whole way, and it's just really our bread and butter, to be honest. So next slide, I think. Good. So a little bit about our practice. We do multifamily work primarily, mixed use work, and urban infill. And we work in different construction types. We use wood, type 5 construction in the US, steel, type 2, and concrete, type 1. This is an example of one of our concrete buildings in San Francisco currently under construction. And then we work in different markets. We primarily work in San Francisco with about 35% of our work in New York at the moment. And our team, we have an 8-person team. And I think that, like David, we have many more projects than I think formerly a team of our size would normally be expected to handle, but I think ArchiCAD has been a really productive tool for us, being able to process so much of the work we do. And are the tools we use, again, this focus is really on ArchiCAD, but supporting ArchiCAD, we use BIMX. Artlantis is a rendering tool that we've found dovetails very nicely with ArchiCAD and is very intuitive and user-friendly. And there's a new tool that I speak a little bit about, Notability. It's an app that you get on an iPad, and it's a sketching tool that we found really kind of brings some of the artistic and sort of analog side back to architecture, where we could do a lot of sketching and free-form type of design and integrate it quickly back into our digital realm. And so this is just an example of how we embark on projects. Initially, when we're doing feasibility studies, our clients come to us looking for yield analysis and general massing and conformance with zoning. And so this is an example of an urban infill project, again, our sort of main project type. And it's analyzing the site. And quickly, we take a massing model and we can start to work on very basic unit plans. And we're working in a market where there's a real housing need and there's an emphasis on efficiency. So we certainly take advantage of ArchiCAD's tools in analyzing, the yield of our projects, the unit sizes, and all the while kind of the model helps us, even in an early stage, incorporate how we stack units and create efficient buildings that down the road we can keep them from getting too complicated in terms of building services and utilities, etc. And further, our model is just so multifaceted. Certain projects have shadow impacts that we need to analyze. And again, right from the onset, I should say, we can analyze shadows and instead of waiting down the road to analyze things that could eventually be problematic. And then ArchiCAD is filled with analytical tools. The zone tool is one that we found to be used, quite a bit. And we use it to, again, analyze square footages and keep track of unit mixes and unit counts and sellable area versus non-revenue space. And it's just a great analytical tool to understand our buildings and to show their conformance with either the zoning or the client's needs. And then part of the process moves into entitlements. Basically, in the urban sectors, we have to go through the process of getting our projects approved by the city agencies. And so we use it for such a variety of projects. ArchiCAD is very adaptable for us, and the whole BIM process is very adaptable. This is an example of an ongoing project in San Francisco that's an adaptive reuse where we have an existing historic building or deemed historic that we need to sensitively build a vertical addition to. And again, we can take our model. It's used for renderings to illustrate the project, but also here we're showing the possibility of creating a range of diagrams that analyze how we're retaining certain parts of the existing building, what we're removing, and it's a great tool in illustrating the process. And this has been very effective in working with the city agencies for them to understand, our intent and our scope of work early on. Again, another adaptive reuse project where we have an existing building where we're doing a vertical addition to. And here you can see that right away our model, it works seamlessly into construction documents and detail documents that we use to either further the production of the design or to also illustrate to the contractors or to the, in this case, to the city agencies, how we're creating certain features of the building so that they can see that our renderings can really be produced in reality. I mentioned the app Notability that we like. I recommend it to all my peers. It's a great tool. And here's an example of a building on the left that's a building we're restoring in Harlem in New York City. And there's some details that come up. Highlighted in the lower right is the new door that's eventually going to be put in. And I can quickly be out in the field and sketch up some details, email it right back to my office, and then my office can work on creating documentation for it. Again, the same process. We have a building, a multi-unit building in San Francisco, where there was some questions about the entry awning system that we wanted to develop. And here again, we can sketch in Notability. I do this basically out in the field and then send it right back to my office, and I have my team work on adapting it back into a construction document. Really effective, quick tool. This is an example of some of the coordination we do with ArchiCAD. BIM is a great tool for making sure that your structural components, architectural components, mechanical components are all organized. And in type 1 construction, this is incredibly important, concrete being one of the lesser forgiving of materials. Here's a building under construction in San Francisco currently. This is the structural model. We can import structural models from Revit into our ArchiCAD models. This one is sort of a hybrid where we imported some components from our structural, but we find the structural components to be fairly easy to model ourselves in ArchiCAD too. So there's a combination of both here. And then quickly, press of a button, turn on different layers to show the final completion of the building. And we could turn this on and off. And in job meetings, this is incredibly helpful to quickly flip back and forth between what the intent of the final design is and what the underlying structure is. And this is just a rendering to show, again, the model sort of translates into our renderings. And ultimately for coordination, this is just a great tool for communication. And really we're finding that having the 3D component and having the ability to turn on and off components of the building on the fly at job meetings, at coordination meetings, just really helps everybody understand things that, you know, in our traditional 2D documents just couldn't quite do as well. And then this is a project where it's a 4-story building in San Francisco. This was a passive house and net zero energy building. And using this building to illustrate how we do some of our production work on designs. So we take our 3D model and we can dissect it, and we can easily create all kinds of very technical drawings from it. And this is literally taking the digital model that we created, you know, using it to create keynotes. And in this particular instance, it was really important to show such precise detail because we had tight tolerances, and furthermore, we wanted to avoid thermal bridging into the building. So we had to come up with a design that shows how we can do cantilevered extensions for balconies that don't have a backspan into the building. And this level of detailing we found got the job done correctly and the first time. And so then in terms of production, I think that one thing I really love about ArchiCAD is, and BIM modeling, and especially, is just that you can really produce what you're going to create. So the digital world matches sort of the built environment. So here's a photo of the lobby of that same passive house building. And then here are some 3D models. These are just screenshots, really nothing fancy here, just taken right from my digital model that I keep active throughout the process. And I was able to coordinate this in the field. There were some field changes that we made, and I could quickly model it, give it to the contractor. And in this case, we did use the 3D models to facilitate some ease of construction. It's just a little bit easier to show the whole concept when you can show it 3-dimensionally. This is an interior rendering of one of the units. And this is a photo of the built product. So the intent here just to really say that you really get a great window into the future when you model effectively and learn to use the tools to their potential. Again, a 3D rendering, another 3D rendering, and then the actual built product. And so depending on the client's motivation and the budget on the project, we can model to every degree of detail. And in this case, it was very helpful. I mean, what they spent on modeling, they avoided in change orders down the road. And finally, one more rendering of the main living space. And the final built product. And then ArchiCAD was just great for creating. This was a unique building for us, and having the efficiency of being able to model everything and study everything in BIM was great. This building had some unusual features of full roof deck covered by photovoltaic panels bifacial that let the light come through. And in addition, we have such tight spaces here. We tried to pack so much into this building, and here you can see how even the battery storage closet that's on site, we're storing energy on site, and we were able to fit everything into such tight spaces, and all of this was modeled, even down to some of the conduit runs, and just to make sure that we maintained critical clearances and critical dimensions that were required. And then this is an example of a multifamily project recently constructed in San Francisco. And it's more of the same conversation here, really just saying that the ArchiCAD's great, the scalability is great for the tool, whether it's a smaller project or a larger project, we really use the same tools. we also are using a licensed server, and we can have offsite access to our BIM server. So really flexible in terms of bringing on extra help, working remotely. It's made the process more fun, quite frankly. So Tom, you could just scroll through some of these images. I think these are just examples of some of the work we're doing. And again, the ArchiCAD model is really, it's kind of amazing to me that we can draw something and have it built to such a degree of accuracy. I still, to be honest, find it a little surprising. So these are some of our construction documents. And here's an example again of taking the model, breaking it apart, dissecting it a little bit, and creating details that, whether they come straight from the model, there's a certain degree sometimes of doing some additional 2D line work and detailing, but the model is still a great reference because to show how all of these individual details coordinate to create the greater composition of this is a storefront example for the building. This was a very effective document, and it actually was less time consuming than it may look because the model was already there for us and we just pull it apart and key details off of it. These are just some interior, this is the finished product. So you can scroll through these, Tom, if you don't mind. And then again, in closing, again, scalability is great. We do some number of single family homes. This is one in New York. It's an addition to a old carriage house. And so whether it's a large project or a small project, I mean, ArchiCAD, we use the same tool set and the same team members, and it's just really adaptable. These are two projects in New York. So as we scale up a little bit, these are 4-unit buildings, and generally these are, you know, we model everything in ArchiCAD and a pretty good degree of precision. Especially the one on the left has a steel moment frame that is also the exterior skin, and to get that to fit just right into the building is definitely a function of being able to model it and analyze it and you know, work out all the bugs. And then this is a project on the books that's high rise in San Francisco, and again, there's really no limitation for ArchiCAD from our perspective. Whatever scale of building, whatever construction type, we just find it a really adaptable tool. And I want to emphasize one more time that I find it to be a fun tool. I like the work we do, and I like the process. And I think my favorite part is working in ArchiCAD. And you know, when I have the time to just focus on designing something and modeling it, that's really where the joy of our work comes from. So I think that's it, Tom. So that kind of wraps it up for me.
Riyad, thank you very much. That was a fantastic presentation. And certainly I appreciate both of you for presenting today and kind of giving the attendees a little bit of an overview on different ways that professionals are using ArchiCAD and BIM in practice. And it's kind of, I think both of you touched on something that I see quite often in talking to clients, and that is that ArchiCAD is used a lot in the design phase, and that really kind of differentiates us a lot from our competitors out there because you know, we see architects starting in early design and then carrying it all the way through the process from design through construction. So that's an important aspect to using BIM for the entire process and not just one part of it. So next steps, if you're interested in taking a look at ArchiCAD further, or if you want more information on the new member value BIM bundle that AIACC has coordinated with Graphisoft, please feel free to contact Kyle here in Southern California. That's his email address, or myself. That's my email address. And then if you would like to submit any inquiries, there's a web address there that you can go to as well. And the deadline for it is September 23rd. It is a significant discount. This is something we do not see outside of the AIACC program. So the 25% off and the bundle of the on-demand training is really unique. So if you're interested in taking a further look, it's a good time to do it. So with that, Lauren, I'm going to pass this back to you.
Okay, thank you, Tom. So we do have a few questions. And so for those of you that had longer questions, I'll go ahead and unmute you if you're available. That way you could clearly state what you were wanting additional information on. But first, it looks like Kurt Schwarm has his hand raised. And so I actually, he will have to call back in to get that answered. But Stephen Williams, let me find you really quick. You should be able to talk to ask your question.
Hello. Great job, Tom and David. Yeah, the workflow that I was concerned about, and I haven't seen an update in some time, so I was hoping maybe you guys could give me a quick update, is when you have a workflow that begins with ArchiCAD and design, but your final deliverable is going to have to be outside of ArchiCAD in a tool such as Revit, because you've got subcontractors that are using CAD MEP for duct cutting and so on and so forth. You've got HydroCAD for sprinkler systems, and you're basically dealing with everything but ArchiCAD. The problem that I've seen in the past is if you go from ArchiCAD into Revit, you've got to go only through IFC. And as we all know, the IFC importer from Revit is horrible because it'll strip out the data, turn everything into a generic object category, which loses its system assignment. And basically, you've just got dumb 3D objects that are highly polygonated. So I was wondering if there's been an update in that area.
Sure. Yeah, I can answer that. Yeah, there has been, and Graphisoft actually recently released with BIM 6X a direct RVT import-export from ArchiCAD. And so to find out more information about that, go to bim6x.com. It's actually going through them for the States, and you can get the RVT import-export. It's good not only for the import-export of RVT files, but what's really also being used a lot for right now is RFA files as well.
Thank you, Tom. I'll give it a look.
Great.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much, Stephen. And so while Kurt is calling back in, we have another question asked anonymously. And it says, where do you find components for your models? And so I will let either David or Riyadh answer that question. Or Tom.
Sure. To do that, there's a variety of places you can get objects. Objects are really prevalent these days. So first off, ArchiCAD works really well with SKP objects. So the 3D warehouse is a fantastic place to get that. With the new RFA import-export that I just talked about, we now have access to all of the RVT objects out there. And actually, for anybody who's there's a new edition of the RFA plugin that just came out a few weeks ago, and now you can also have the parametrics or parameters that are available in family objects within Revit are now available in ArchiCAD objects as well when you bring those in. So that means that you can bring in any objects from manufacturers, and then there's just a whole host of other objects out there that you can get in a variety of formats, and there's an add-on ArchiCAD called ModelPort that will bring in a great number of other objects. So there's plenty of opportunities to bring in objects from really unlimited sources out there.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. And it looks like we have another question from Leslie. She wanted to ask this directly to David if he's available. And she said, it looks like you had an image around your BIMX that reflected real world scenery. How did you do that?
Yes, so it's a trick. It's actually in ArchiCAD, it's a giant wall, like 1,000 feet tall and 1,500 feet or 2,000 feet away. So we took site pictures and just mapped the texture texture map onto the wall. So as you move around the BIMX, in fact, you would, at certain vantage points, you'd see that it's actually like a giant piece of scenery, that's placed very far away from the object.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much. And this could be for either architect. Another anonymous question is, how big is the challenge in getting new people up to speed with the software? So I'm assuming either new employees or other users.
I can give a little bit of perspective on that because actually I've got a new employee just started yesterday. What we find out there, and Riyadh probably would have the same experience, is coming out of schools, you don't necessarily find people right off the bat with directly with ArchiCAD experience. But if the person working for us has had some experience with, say, Revit or even some of the other 3D softwares out there, so that they have an understanding basically of what it means conceptually to have an integrated 3D model and build that way. Learning the specific tools of ArchiCAD is very, very simple. I mean, relatively simple. And like the piano, you start playing a little bit right away, and you're going to get better over time and learn, to be more efficient, more skilled. But we find that the training time for somebody who has at least some exposure to the concepts of BIM it's just not a real obstacle for us.
I could agree with that statement. Yeah, I would just say that David's quite right. We gave up on trying to find people that know ArchiCAD. We train everybody now, and I do find that most folks that have some experience, which is almost everybody now that has some BIM experience, it's fairly transferable to ArchiCAD, and I've been kind of amazed at how quick some of my staff picks it up. So it's no longer been quite the obstacle, and I mention it when we're hiring that ArchiCAD experience preferred, but there's just not enough ArchiCAD users out there as far as I can tell, and so we just train, and my staff fortunately likes the software very much. So retention so far has been decent. No one's complaining that they feel paralyzed by it. So.
And I was going to mention too, it's interesting because the market's so tight right now. I was actually at a Revit meeting where they mentioned that they were having problems finding Revit people. So I thought that was kind of interesting. But one of the things that has happened recently too, I just saw at a Graphisoft meeting last week, was that they now have a new Revit to ArchiCAD document they've created that basically maps everything in Revit, so that if you're a Revit user, it shows exactly what that same process or control, shortcut, whatever is in ArchiCAD. And so it's a new document that they have now that can help Revit user get up very quickly with ArchiCAD.
Tom, I'll just add one more thing, and I know this is true going all the way back to AutoCAD, that learning the obstacles or whatever time it takes to learn ArchiCAD specifically versus Revit or anything else, we find is really not is pretty minor in comparison with the time it takes to get up to our local office standards. So in other words, everybody who uses ArchiCAD, I'm sure Riyadh, myself, other firms, we all use it in a little bit different way, different layering techniques, different pen settings, different ways of displaying objects and so forth. So learning where to find the wall tool in ArchiCAD is very quick. It takes longer, but this would be true of every software, and that's why we have to train, irregardless of the background of the new person, is learning the way that we do things, and the way we organize our models.
Okay, perfect. And so Stephen was saying, I use Revit daily and it is horrid compared to my first love with ArchiCAD. There you go. I also mentioned in the chat, if anyone else has any questions, feel free to raise your hand or type it in the chat box. We're here to walk you through anything or have answers to any lingering questions. Okay. Tom, did you have any last minute comments you'd like to add before we sign off?
Sure. We just wanted to first thank everybody for attending today, and also especially for the two speakers, for David and Riyadh, for taking the time to put this together. Really appreciate that, and hopefully everybody attended today could see some of the different ways that they're using this in their practice, and the power behind it. So with that, I think that if everybody's interested, please feel free to give us a call, contact us in let's see, go back to that. Yep, I'll put that back up so that information is there. Otherwise, thank you, Lauren, for putting this together for us.
And thank you both, Tom, Riyadh, and David for joining us, and for all of the attendees joining us. We will send a follow-up recording with this webinar in case you missed any portion of it. And also, just want to thank you for attending today. You guys have a great day, and we'll talk to you soon.
Yeah,
thank you very much.
Thank you.